If you are an Australian who uses the internet, then you must be wondering, what is the Haynes report and how is it going to affect me? Well, the short of it is, it should work in your favour. The whole idea is to protect the consumer, to put under the microscope the financial services industry, to ensure that their practices are working in the best interests of consumer. Okay, that's the crux of it. It's looked at superannuation funds, the insurance industry, financial planning, and the banking system. Most of the changes, unless you have an incredible number of shares in banks, probably won't affect you at all, and if they do, it'll be for the better, as I've said. There's one area that I want to discuss with you which is probably most concerning to the average Australian, and that's the changes to the banks. The first thing that they're going to do is have a look at banking systems and their general practices. Okay, leave that aside. The other thing that's been discussed is commissions for mortgage brokers, and number two, the restrictions around getting a loan, and I want to cover those off quickly. So, the restrictions around getting a loan, a lot of this has already been implemented, but in the past there's been a really critical step in getting a loan is understanding how you're going to pay it back. And for a bank to meet its obligations, its legal requirements, it must demonstrate that it has given you a loan that you have the capacity to pay back. They consider your income, they consider your spending habits, they'll consider your expenses. And so your living expenses. In the past, living expenses have largely been standardised, and so they will consider where you live, how old you are, what sort of a house you live in, etc., your family situation, and you will go into a particular category of living expenses. The report is suggesting that this might not be good enough, because some people doesn't matter where they live or how they live, have terrible spending habits, others have good spending habits. So what the report is suggesting, and what banks have already done, is started to look at people's actual spending habits. And so they might call in, before you get a loan, your statements, your bank statements, and they'll actually analyse where you're spending your money. Do you buy cigarettes? Are you spending a lot on a Friday night out with your mates? Are you spending too much on magazines or online shopping? They will actually look at your real spending habits. This, in the end, is a good thing for consumer. What we're trying to do is make sure that you do not take out a loan that you can't afford. So let's have a look at the other major change that's in discussion in the media, and that's all around commissions. The consumer and many authorities believe that commissions is a dirty word. And the reality is, it's not necessarily. The way that commissions work in the banking sector in credit is as follows. If you go to a bank and you get a loan directly from the bank, they will have an interest rate associated with that loan, and that might be, say, 5%. If you were to approach a broker and say, I would like to get a loan, and I've found this product available that has a 5% interest rate, they might come to you and say, I have got another product that I can offer you or recommend that has exactly the same features, but the interest rate is slightly lower. It's 4.8%. From that 4.8%, the institution will pay a commission to the broker. It does not affect your interest rate or your back pocket. What the commission is suggesting is that some rogue advisors will recommend a product based on the best commission that they can get. Well, a way around that is to simply standardise commissions. It's a very simple solution. The alternative, which is what's being potentially recommended, is to ask individuals to pay a fee for service. We know in the industry already that 95%, in fact more than 95% of people will not pay fee for service for mortgage broking services, which means the mortgage broking industry will dissipate. So if we have no independent mortgage brokers, the only choice that you will have is to go to these large institutions and seek a loan directly from them. It will give a lot of power to these institutions, and it will kill competition. It also means that you cannot get any independent advice at all. So long-term commissions are not necessarily a bad thing, and we are very passionate about spreading the word that we hope that this is not implemented.